What's up, everybody? I am Logan Burchett, co-founder, chief operating officer at Forecaster, and today I'm really excited to be talking about the 8 financial model best practices for startup founders. Now, why is this important? A lot of times founders spend a lot of time, effort, and energy building a financial model, but they do all of that, and then at the end of it, they've got this kind of hodgepodge spreadsheet that it's unorganized. The logic doesn't really make sense. It's really hard to follow. And a lot of times people forget that the usability and the ability to navigate a financial model is every bit as important as the calculation logic of the model itself. Now remember, a financial model is a communication tool. It's going to be something that you're going to use to communicate to investors, to your team, goals, and things that you want to accomplish. So it's really, really important to make sure that it's done right. And when done right, it can be highly organized, it can be highly effective. And the 8 tips in this video are going to show you how to accomplish just that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Before we dig into the content though, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and helps us produce more content. So with all that done, we're going to go ahead and jump into the content. Okay, so first and foremost, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to build our financial model from the bottoms up. Now, what does that mean? There are 2 types of ways to build a financial model. What's known as top-down financial modeling, and then there's bottoms-up financial modeling. Now, top-down financial modeling is essentially taking a percentage of a market. So let's say that you've got a $1 billion market, you think that you can get 1% of that market, so that's $10 million, right? So if you just say that we've got this massive market opportunity and you're taking a small percentage of that, that would be what's known as top-down financial modeling. There's a lot of problems with top-down financial modeling, but I think the biggest one is that it doesn't really tell you anything, right? If you really think about it, all it tells you is the size of your total addressable market. So if I'm going to get 1% of $1 billion or $100 billion, then all that really tells me is that $100 billion is a big number, and that if you get 1% of it, then that's going to be a lot of money. That's not really that interesting. I mean, you might as well just tell me what the size of your market is. It doesn't really tell me what you're going to do from an execution standpoint to capture that $1 billion in revenue if it were $100 billion and you caught 1% of it. So instead of building this top-down financial model that doesn't really tell you anything operationally, instead we recommend that you build a bottoms-up financial model. Now, a bottoms-up financial model is going to uncover the individual things that you're going to be doing in order to grow the business. So from like customer acquisition, it's going to look at the actual channels that you use, like Facebook ads, Google ads, things like that. Or if you're doing referrals, anything like that, you're going to have goals for your bottoms-up financial model. Whenever it's built, a bottoms-up financial model is going to really give you tangible goals to strive for. And that's going to be really helpful when it comes down to operational execution as well as communication with investors. So bottoms-up financial modeling is definitely a must if you're doing the best practices of financial modeling. Stay away from top-down financial modeling. Best practice number 2, you're going to want to create a cover page with a link table of contents. Now, the reason that you want to do this is because, again, your financial model is a communication tool. It is going to help you communicate with investors and with your company. So it's really important that the tool that you've created is easy to navigate. A table of contents is really going to help make sure that your thoughts are organized, easy to navigate, so that even if I'm completely unfamiliar with your business, completely unfamiliar with your financial model, I can jump in and at least understand where different parts of the models live. Really, really important in navigation and ease of use when it comes to financial modeling. Best practice number 3, always start with real data. Now, the thing about financial modeling that sometimes gets a bad rap is that people assume that, hey, these are all just complete guesses, right? Whatever I put in the spreadsheet has a 0% chance of actually coming true, so why even waste our time? It doesn't make sense to guess. This is only half true. I mean, a lot of what you put into a financial model are essentially guesses. That's a lot of what financial modeling is it's just a way of putting together really articulate and sophisticated expectations for what's going to happen in the future. Those guesses become significantly more powerful whenever they're rooted in your real data. So if you have what are known as assumptions or inputs or guesses in some sense, if you have those that are backed up by real data, then they stop becoming guesses and they start actually being anchored into reality, which is really, really important. It's important in maintaining accuracy of forecast. It's also very important when it comes to communicating with investors and your team so that you can understand where the real data lives and then where the guesses and the inputs live and kind of what is at risk and what's not at risk. So always start with real data. It's very important whenever it comes to building out a financial model. Moving on to best practice number 4, you need to know your model inside and out. Now, a financial model, whenever built correctly, is essentially a simulation of your business. And so you need to understand in its entirety how that simulation works. That's how you're going to get the most out of your financial model. This is really important whenever you're trying to use your model operationally. You're trying to make decisions. You're trying to understand what input has the biggest effect of the output of your financial model. The only way that you can know that is by knowing exactly how your entire financial model works. But it's perhaps even more important whenever it comes to fundraising. Whenever you're using your financial model for a fundraise, then investors are a lot of times going to ask you questions about your model that you need to be prepared to answer. The only way that you can really adequately use the financial model to answer all the investors' questions is to really know it and spend the time and the effort in learning the ins and outs of your financial model. If you spend the time and do the work and put in the effort and learn everything there is to know about your financial model, it's going to pay off in spades whenever you get into deep due diligence with an investor that wants to dive in and learn everything about your financial model. All right, so best practice number 5, you're going to want to tailor your key metrics to your business model. Now, what do we mean by that? SaaS business models are going to have significantly different metrics than, for example, hardware business models or e-commerce business models. So it doesn't make sense for a hardware business model, for example, to focus a lot on churn because that's a metric that's traditionally associated with SaaS business models. So a really quick way to, not set yourself up for success when it comes to financial modeling, both operationally and for a fundraise, is by just using the wrong metrics and focusing on the wrong things. So you're going to want to make sure to do the research, talk to mentors, and spend the time to understand what are the metrics that are important specifically for your business, and then use those to forecast and then set everything up from there. Best practice number 6 is to keep your model up to date. Now, what good is a financial model if you let it go stale? A lot of people build financial models initially because they want to execute on a fundraise, and then as soon as the fundraise is done, or perhaps it didn't get executed, they put the model on a shelf and then they never look at it again. This is a true shame. It is a crime in financial modeling as far as I'm concerned, because the true value of a financial model comes after you've secured the bag, after you've gotten the fundraise, and once you're deep into operations. That's whenever you take all of those guesses, all of those forecasts, you square it with reality and you see where you were right and where you were wrong. And it's where you were wrong that you really get the good stuff. That's where you can really dig in and understand why were we wrong? What assumptions specifically were we off on? And then how do we either fix that and close that gap, or reassess our guesses and then make that forecast a lot more meaningful? It's incredibly important, and it also sets you up for creating a forecast versus actual report, or a variance report, as you may have heard it called. This is a report that's going to show you what you said you were going to do, square that with what you actually did, and then compare a variance, and then you can share that with investors or your team and everybody. Creating a variance report is really, really helpful when it comes to fundraising, and it's also really, really helpful whenever you're trying to dig in and understand what's going right and what's going wrong with your business. Best practice number 7 is you're going to want to create a multitude of scenarios that are going to match the investor's concerns. So we all know that a financial model is far from reality, right? It is a series of educated guesses that is trying to convey what you think is realistic for your business. As such, you're going to want to have a multitude of different scenarios. You're going to want a best case scenario, a worst case scenario, and a base case scenario at a bare minimum. So the reason that you do this is because if an investor asks what happens if you don't hit your growth targets, or what happens if perhaps your conversion rates slip or your churn is higher than expected, you're going to want to have that in your back pocket so that you can give them kind of a range of possible outcomes for their investment. It's also really important for you as the founder of the business and somebody that's managing the business, because you're going to want to plan the cash flow and the runway of your business off of that worst case scenario. You never want to bet the company that you're going to exceed expectations or even meet expectations. You always want to plan and be a good fiduciary of the company by looking at what is the worst thing that can happen, and we're going to plan for the worst. So the old saying, plan for the worst, hope for the best, really comes true whenever it comes to financial modeling. So be sure to have plenty of scenarios. Be sure to be able to articulate those scenarios to investors, and then also have a scenario that you yourself use as more of a conservative scenario to plan cash for your business. And best practice number 8, the final best practice, is make your model easy to present and share. Now, this is very important whenever it comes to fundraising specifically, but it also is important whenever you're sharing your model with your team and you have multiple stakeholders in the model. If it's just a model that's used for you, if you're the only one that's ever going to look at the model, it doesn't really matter that much what it looks like, so long as you can understand it and so long as it's accurate. That, however, is very rarely the case. Typically, that model is going to be shared with lenders, investors, your team, all throughout the company. So you want to make sure that you're doing them a favor and that you're setting yourself up to look good by making your model very easy to navigate and make it easy for other people to jump in, understand what's going on. So some quick tips here are, if you have an input, like a hard-coded number, color that different than an output, which is something that's being calculated, so that you can quickly look and see what are the things, what are the inputs, the manual inputs that are driving my forecast. Have tabs organized so that each section of the model is on its own tab, so that it's easy to navigate and just kind of understand where certain aspects of the model live, so that if I'm looking to dive into one specific aspect, I can just go to that tab and get all the context that I need for that particular thing. All right, well, there you have it, guys. 8 financial model best practices for startup founders. Hopefully this content was helpful. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If so, please like the video, add a comment, subscribe to the channel. Again, helps us out a ton. Look forward to getting you more content like this, and see you in the next video.